This challenge is a showcase home, and these people, this is pictures that the architect took to put in their portfolio. Now, this ventilated rain screen application is also called open joint cladding. It's a wood application in this case. Is a new design trend that I've seen here in the States. Apparently, it's pretty popular in Europe. Now, when you use the term rain screen, it can create a vernacular challenge because we also talk about rain screen when we're talking about what we put behind the siding to create a gap between the siding and the sheathing. Now, when we're talking about this particular application, the exposure to the elements, as you can see, this is actually a slat space slat. So it allows rain and moisture into the inner wall. Now, the backing, the intent of the design is to make it warm in the winter because the backing is black, but cool in the summer because you have air able to flow between those slats. Now, my thoughts on this particular application is, because of this challenge, we can actually achieve a look very similar to this with siding patterns that do not expose the inner wall. So that's just something to think about. Our introduction to this issue came from a letter to the homeowner saying, hey, we need to figure out what's going on because nobody really wants to help. Now, in this case, I always find it important that people understand a stain warranty. Stain manufacturers I've never met one that didn't, clearly state in the fine print of their contracts that their only warranty is only good for the cost of the stain. So if you have a $40,000 wood package and you put $2,000 worth of stain on it and your whole house fails like this, the stain warranty says, oh, too bad, so sad, here's your $2,000 later. Now, this particular type of issue is unique to me, and I'm going to get into that in a second. Now, in this case, I always talk about wood lovers, and when wood goes bad, you're talking about a jilted lover, and in this case, this broken-hearted customer wants to sue everybody, okay? And because she's so upset, everybody she's talking to is running for cover, and that happens every time there's a problem. No builder wants to look back, no finishers want to look back, nobody wants to look backwards, okay? Oh, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. And in her letter here, and it's important to architects that are watching this particular video, she feels it's definitely a ball in the architect's court to know this stuff, which is the entire point of this video. Now, this issue started to show itself in just over a year. And this is one of the weirdest failures I've ever seen. I've never seen where, the mildew issue shows the outline of the roof and the outline of the studs here, okay? And I fired it to a few of my buddies, and they started firing me back more questions than I could actually answer or, have an amateur homeowner in the field answer these questions. I mean, there was more questions raised than we had answers when we started really looking into it. Now, the experts are weighing in, so I had the guys tell me that these little spots can often be caused when wood is stained and sealed with a film forming finish and the moisture content of the wood is too high, and the film traps moisture inside the wood and creates an issue that can manifest in little mildew spores like this, okay? But we're all looking at pictures at this point. We can't really tell anything conclusive without running a bunch of tests. And by the time my guys started telling me all the tests that were run, it was not realistic for me to ask the homeowner to run these tests. So we decided to go out there after I did the stain webinar, which I will shamelessly plug throughout this entire video because it's so budget impactful for you guys. We decided to go ahead and come out here and do this case study and do the site visit and do the testing ourselves. So on the top here, you see the test when I was having the customer run tests. What she did was went out there with like a paper towel and just some oxygen bleach and did a little bit of scrubbing on the wood. Now, when she scrubbed on that top part, her concern was that the wood was scoring a little bit. In other words, it was scratching the wood. This is white cedar. And she was really afraid because it's a soft wood. So when I went out there, what you see on the bottom is I had the painter run tests of let's double the concentration of oxygen bleach and apply it with a sprayer without brushing it or without, running the risk of scoring the wood. And so we got some good results on that oxygen bleach with those painter tests. Now, when I got out there and saw this in person, I started hoping that this mold manifestation was not on the back side of the house, as the customer was worried about that could be a health concern, okay? And no matter how you slice it, these little teeny cracks, I mean, I can barely fit my finger in there. That's going to be a cleanup challenge no matter what you do. I mean, if it was on the back, it's going to be a challenge, and cleaning those top shelf areas is going to be a challenge. Now, one of the things I always kind of point out here on the left side, see, this is a picture of a corner. On the right side, there was an overhang, or excuse me, on the left side, there was an overhang. On the right side, there was no overhangs. In other words, there was nothing to block water from hitting this area. Everywhere on this house that had an overhang had a much less of an issue than a place that had no overhang. And I think that's of special interest to architects. Here you can see the dividing line. On the left side, there's barely any issue, and on the right side, it's completely coated with mildew. Okay, so when I got on site, I interviewed the architect and the painter. They agreed to meet with me, which was really cool. And so when I interviewed him, I asked the painter, what was the application? And he said he did hit it with the moisture meter, and it registered at 13%, which is perfectly fine. And then he did a dip tank trough application as far as putting the stain on the wood. So he sanded it, and then he dipped it in a tank to get the full seal on the boards. And then when we were testing cleanup methods, I misunderstood the homeowner when he said, hey, we got some white stuff happening on the black backing. And for a half a second there, I thought, is the oxygen bleach discoloring the black backing? Now, later I found out it was just some of the stain had splashed back there. But being me, I pursued this. Would the backing discolor under a wood cleaner? I reached out to Delta Facade and I started asking them, one of the things that I thought is if the oxygen bleach does not work to clean this, they might have to use a wood stripper, which is gnarly chemicals. And so I called Delta Facade, the manufacturer of the black backing, again, thinking that it had discolored. And I started asking them, hey, would this discolor under wood cleaners? And they were like, well, we don't know. We didn't test for that. And so I thought, whoa, that's kind of crazy. I mean, we have to clean wood if you're going to maintain it. Most of these open joint cladding ventilated rain screen applications are to let the wood weather, which is what these guys were hoping for. But the manufacturers had never tested to see if the backing discolored under a cleaner. Now, we know by now it does not discolor under oxygen bleach, but wood strippers are gnarly chemicals, and so I don't know about that. This house is so close to the lake, you cannot use a wood stripper. They're that gnarly, so it would be like it would cause an environmental hazard on the lake. And then when we tested the oxygen bleach, we had some issues with it reacting weirdly to this metal, this really cool composite metal thing they've got down there. So it was it's already kind of rusting. So wherever the oxygen bleach went down, it left a trail on it. So it became one of the challenges that we were looking at. When we got there and started, talking about the health concerns, we ran a mirror back there best we could on several places in the home to see if there was an issue manifesting on the backside. And luckily for us, there was not an issue. The cleanup questions that we had were, hey, how are we going to get it on the top? How is he going to get it? Are we going to score the wood? And at this point, I told the homeowner, look, if you are going to score this wood with the cleanup method, it's going to be a lot less painful than spending $100,000 to redo the whole house, okay? If our cleanup method has to score the wood a little bit and you're back 10 feet, you're going to notice the scoring a hell of a lot less than you're going to notice this gray, right? So we committed to the concentrated oxygen bleach plus back brushing where needed. And we were able to cover up the metal to mitigate the problem with oxygen bleach touching the metal. Now, here I'm going to talk about the stain. The stain was acting weird on this. It was supposed to be a bleaching oil, but I happen to know that Cabot's is in the process of changing it over to a bleaching stain. And so when this stain started coming off, it came off like a film forming finish, even though it was supposed to be a penetrating finish. So There's question marks on the stain. Another shameless plug for the stain webinar I did, which you do get an HSW credit for, because I go in depth on why these stains are becoming part problematic, or maybe even endangering the wood more than they're protecting the wood. The transformation is awesome. As the guy started putting the oxygen bleach and doing it, what we did was in different places he would pressure wash it, and we got to be careful when you pressure wash it. You got that pressure down, or they would use the oxygen bleach and back brush, or a combination. It depended on the severity of the problem, where they are in this issue. Okay. So the post-mortem on this is really for the owners. No matter what you do, the owner's going to end up footing the bill. This lady tried to get everybody to like do something before she had to pay, but at the end of the day, she had to pay these guys to do something. I don't think they're ready to. I don't know where they are with the lawsuit part, but we did commit to have the painter. I believe the painter probably helped them out. The postmortem for me on this is early and often. If you inspect this house and you start to see a little bit of gray, you go ahead and clean it up with the oxygen bleach at that time, and you won't be faced with this gigantic problem. So the architect considerations I want you to take away from this is always take the 10-year view. I did the architect interview, and he even admitted, a lot of times we just think about what it looked like when it's up. When I called the manufacturers and they had never even tested to see if wood cleaners, especially strippers, discolored the black backing, obviously they didn't think too far past having it up and looking good when you're talking about wood. Okay, so especially now, when you're taking a 10-year view and you're making stain selections, call the tech department and make sure the cleanup of those stains does not involve strippers. Avoid strippers at all costs. Wood strippers are caustic chemicals. Not only do they may or may not endanger the backing, I have challenged the two manufacturers of that black backing to see if strippers will discolor it. Now, how much luck I'm getting on that. They're going to have to do it pro bono, but they are going to do it because I never give up on anything. So avoid, when you're doing your research, the most important thing, man, make sure the cleanup of whatever stain you're going to use does not involve the use of strippers. Okay. One of the ways that the architect and I decided that we could have avoided some of the human error potential on this would be specified as factory finish. Make sure that your owners understand that, you got to inspect this every 6 months to every year. If you see something happening, you address it right away. You do not let it get to this stage before you address it. In this case, I believe the homeowner was trying to, get somebody else to come back and fix it for her. And she was pretty angry. And by the time I got involved, they realized that they're going to have to take action on this regardless. You can't let it get this far, okay? Third and final shameless plug for the stain webinar, because I go into why it is so hard to find a stain that you can avoid the use of strippers with. And then the last consideration I want is help. When you guys are out there doing research and you do find finishes that don't require strippers, please report back to us so that we can make better recommendations to architects and designers and homeowners everywhere. Chris Buffalo signing off. Thank you very much. This is the end of the case study.